Welcome to Augment Creativity with the Power of AI.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Augmenting Creativity with the Power of AI. I see some familiar faces in the crowd, so no heckling, please. Very grateful to be here. My name is Anil Jain. I lead Global Strategic Industries for Google Cloud, so we look after how we're leveraging the power of AI to help transform and reimagine industries, including media and entertainment. Today we're just going to walk you through an interesting conversation, show you a few things, and hopefully get the creativity flowing. So, we're here to talk about how AI has moved from being just an experiment and a concept to going beyond pilots and actually into production, where we're driving real business impact. And in media and entertainment, we're actually seeing it across the entire ecosystem take shape in ways that are behind the scenes and sometimes right in front of our faces, whether or not it's apparent. A great example of this is the Super Bowl. So the Super Bowl, as you know, is the most viewed live event in the United States on an annual basis. Advertisers spend millions of dollars for just a few seconds in front of the assembled audiences. And this past February, if you watched the game and you watched the ads, some people come for the ads as well as the game, AI was actually a prominent participant. According to iSpot, 23% of Super Bowl commercials, which is like 15 out of 66 ads, featured AI in some way. This included, of course, AI brands selling directly to consumers, and you saw some of those, as well as consumer brands incorporating AI technology to help in the creation of those ads. And in 2025, following recommendations from the Oscars Science and Technology Council, films using generative AI and generative media are now fully eligible for awards, provided that human involvement remains the primary driver of creative authorship. Now, at the time, only a few of the contenders for the Oscars admitted or talked about using AI or AI assistants for their artists. And this was in things like the voice modifications for The Brutalist and Emilia Perez, or the blue eyes of the Fremen, personal favorite, in Dune 2. That's where the technology was deployed and then kind of only acknowledged as a kind of mention on the side. A big difference is this year, there's a bunch of qualifying films that are proudly talking about leveraging the technology to really assist in the way creative exploration happens. There's a film called Ahimsa, which is directed by Craig Liu, and this film is one of the first kind of AI and proud entries, explicitly disclosing using, providers like Runway as well as Google Veo to create the film's visuals, and they described AI as a paintbrush rather than as a painter, okay? Which I think is a very important point. We're going to talk more about that today. There's another animated short called All Heart, which is done by a team of Oscar winners, Will McCormick and Michael Govier, and they used a closed AI model that was trained specifically on original hand-drawn artwork by Jimmy Thompson to assist with in-betweening and texture enhancement. And I think we have a little bit of a treat in store for you in a few minutes. You can see another example of kind of this innovation in action. Now, shifting from traditional media to digital natives and content creators, which of course, we've spent the last few NABs talking about how the entire media and entertainment industry's composition is changing. A staggering 86% of global content creators now use generative AI in one form or the other. It's helping to fuel content creation, expand the reach to new audiences by doing localization and dubbing, making the content more accessible to different parts of the world, and even helping to adapt long-form existing content to short-form video and audio. And so when you talk to these creators, they don't just want a tool that generates an image. They want an assistant that understands their personality, their style, the intent of the narrative they're trying to show. And they're looking, and this is, I think, a key point, for a collaborator, not a calculator, right? And this is where we move from kind of AI being used for incremental innovation and simple automation to really leveraging AI as a partner. Now, you've likely heard of experiments and projects in VR. Some of you might be involved in virtual reality or augmented reality. AI is actually helping us to kind of pioneer the medium of extended reality, or XR. And this is where physical and virtual worlds are combined to create new experiences. And at Google, we've often talked about kind of our mission in media and entertainment being one about helping our customers and our partners in the media and entertainment industry deliver new audience experiences, and this is exactly that. It's blurring the lines between watching and interacting with content, and it's really introducing the question for all of us to understand what actually could media be or become. Asteroid, which premiered at the Venice Film Festival immersive competition, is a great example of this. It's a 2025 XR film by Doug Liman, who you may know, was the one who directed The Bourne Identity, Edge of Tomorrow, a bunch of other films. And Asteroid is kind of a landmark in AI-driven storytelling. What happens is the viewers actually engage in real-time voice conversation with an AI version of NFL star DK Metcalf before the film begins, and then the AI dynamically adjusts the storyline based on the viewer's verbal input and choices. So this ends up creating a personalized version of the experience for every viewer. This is not just about voice interaction, but it's about multimodal inputs, right? It's about where the user, what the user says and what they do that actually changes the experience in real time. So if Asteroid shows us how we can finally talk to a story, then what you're seeing, or what you will be seeing with Project Genie, represents the next leap in the ability to act within a world that doesn't exist. All right, so that was Project Genie, and some of you may have already heard about this, but this is, what you're viewing there is not a pre-rendered game engine or some static video file. This is actually a foundation world model from Google DeepMind that can take a single prompt, a sketch, or even a photograph, as you saw in the video, and transform it into a fully interactive simulated environment. It understands physics, it understands movement, it understands intention. It also has built-in memory, right? So it remembers what's done and what's seen. So you can actually interact with it. And it creates the rules for the world on the fly, okay? So this is kind of a sign of the kind of amazing breakthrough technology that is emerging from world-class labs like Google DeepMind's. And if you think about, okay, how does this apply into the evolving world of media and entertainment? For storytellers, it kind of eliminates the blank page problem, right? You can rapidly prototype, ideate, come up with concepts, and actually create these immersive worlds to explore what the experience might be like that you're trying to generate. And it allows you to actually focus on the soul of the story and allow AI to assist you with the environment creation. So the notion here, and part of our discussion will be, is this fact that AI has moved from merely being a curiosity. I mean, if you think about it, it's April 2026, and we've been kind of in this AI explosion or AI era for the last almost 3.5 years, right? So a lot has happened in that time. It's moved from curiosity to present day reality. And for everyone in this room, whether you're a storyteller, a strategist, an advertising executive, a leader, the statistics are just noise unless they translate into better creative, better product, and better value. And so, from our standpoint at Google, we don't think about AI in media as prompt in, Hollywood film out, right? We view it as the next evolution of artists' tools, expanding the canvas of creativity and expanding the possibilities of what you can do in storytelling. Now, if we don't kind of say this more than once, which I'm sure we will today, we really care a lot about this being artist-centered and artist-driven. It's about human creativity, and that's why all the technology that we are pushing the frontier on is actually being done with artists, with creatives. So ultimately the goal is to put the best technology in the hands of the best creatives to tell the best stories. And the real magic happens where frontier research from our friends at Google DeepMind meets enterprise execution. It's the intersection of the most advanced AI models in the world and the most demanding production environments on the planet. And to demystify that journey, I'm really, really grateful to have a couple friends with me today to actually have a discussion, share a little bit about what they've done and what they're doing today and where the future is headed. I'm very glad to have Marcia from Google DeepMind with us and my friend Dustin Myers. We've been on a long journey together over many years from Fox Sports. Today, as we, before I turn it over to them, in our conversation, we're really kind of trying to have the arc of our conversation span 3 acts. Like, what is the current state of technology today? You saw a little bit about that from me. You're going to hear about more from Marcia and Dustin. Then we're going to discuss what they see is on the near horizon, what's coming, right around the corner. And then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about future vision, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. So with that, Dustin, maybe you can introduce yourself, and when you do, talk about, of course, the business you're in, but also what the relation with generative and agentic AI is for you currently, and then, of course, later we'll dive into more.
Yeah, my name's Dustin Myers. I'm with Fox Sports, and I think I have one of the coolest jobs there is. I run a team of some of the best people in the business, and what that translates to is our technology and engineering teams across our media management, our assignment desk, our acquisitions teams. But it really distills down to how do we do our jobs better? How do we make the people we work with lives better? And how do we ultimately tell the best stories in sports? We're one of the biggest broadcasters in North America, and I think we do dual events, which is what we call Super Bowls, World Cups, World Series, better than anyone. And I think we've embraced technology to drive creativity, but also to drive the efficiency of kind of the back end of how we do our work, kind of the less glamorous stuff. But we've leaned into technology, and I think we've had some really exciting results.
Thank you, Dustin. Well, thanks for joining today.
Of course.
I know Dustin and I have done a number of talks over the years, but the state of technology has continued to advance over that time, and it's just been an amazing journey to be on. Marcia, thank you so much for joining us. I think when we talk about working with artists to actually advance the state of technology, you're a prime example of that. So maybe we'll play the clip first. Is that what we want to do? Okay.
Sure.
We're going to play a little clip of a project that Marcia is going to talk about called Dear Upstairs Neighbor. And I won't steal the thunder on kind of the background, the detail, but I do understand that it's premiering. Is it at the Tribeca Festival? Yes, coming up. All right, let's play the clip, please. All right, Marcia, can you do us a favor of introducing yourself, your role, and what you're doing at DeepMind?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Marcia Mayer. I am the head of production for DeepMind's media and entertainment program area. I don't know, Dustin, I think I might have one of the coolest jobs out there.
Yeah.
But we're a
We
group.
can take a vote later.
Yes, you all will decide. We're a group in DeepMind's Frontier AI unit, and we have a very humble goal. Our goal is to 10x human creativity. And we do that by creating new capabilities and tools, as Anil mentioned, directly with the people who are going to be using them. We believe that the best research and the best innovation happens when we have a really tight feedback loop between the creators and the people actually doing the technical development. So these are 3 examples of projects we worked on last year. We're in Vegas, so hopefully everyone has seen Wizard of Oz at the Sphere. If you haven't yet, please go. It's amazing. These are all projects that had impossible needs that we couldn't do, and our team at DeepMind helped create solutions to do it. So Wizard of Oz, as you all know, is a classic film. We had to increase it to fit the world's largest screen. That meant creating outpainting models, creating performance models that could add the characters that weren't on screen during the original film. That meant creating fine fixing tools so that we could iterate on little mistakes without having to completely regenerate entire shots. Ancestra is the first film we did in our collaboration with Darren Aronofsky's production company, Primordial Soup. This was a live action shoot, AI-assisted co-production, and the goal here was to create a newborn baby that was the director, because the film is a very personal story. It was about the director's day of her birth. And she had all these beautiful pictures of the day. It was a very stressful day. She was born with a hole in her heart. And her father, in shock, just documented the entire thing. And she really wanted the film to have a newborn baby that looked just like her. So we were able to fine-tune a model on these pictures her father had taken. And rather than hiring a 6-month-old that doesn't even look like a newborn and takes you out of the story, we had a newborn in the film that looked just like Eliza McNitt, the director. And then finally, Dear Upstairs Neighbors, which you just saw a very short clip of, is an animated short film that I produced. The director's name is Connie He, and she, throughout her career in animation, had a dream of having an animated film that felt like an abstract expressionistic painting come to life. Every frame she wanted to look like a living painting. And with CG, this is really hard because rendering machines just kind of smooth everything out. It's really hard to get the thick, gritty texture of abstract expressionism. And you could physically paint 7,200 frames to do a 5-minute short, but very few people have ever attempted to do that, and it's not really a scalable solution for artists who want to get this type of style. So we worked directly with the researchers at DeepMind to train a model on Connie's own artwork that she hand-painted herself, and we were able to create a look that is very unique and exactly what she dreamed of. And we'll go into more details later.
Thank you, Marcia. I think just there's very exciting projects underway, some of which we can talk about, some which we will talk about in the future. And so we're looking forward to that. Let's jump ahead. And Dustin, live sports is intense, it's stressful. I think either you're on a plane or I'm on a plane, but like we're never able to connect because you're around the world trying to make sure that live sports production is going well for Fox Sports. In the high stakes, kind of zero failure for tolerance world of live sports production, how has AI moved from kind of being an idea and kind of a technical tool to being something that's mission critical to your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think as technology has advanced, we've seen an interesting phenomenon where the consumer tools have actually outpaced the professional tools, right? So I think in the slide we have the IaaS up there, which is one of our greatest examples of technology done well for us. But let's go back in time a little bit, which in technology seems like an eon, to 2018. And we and my team, who some of them are here, were at this show looking to solve a problem that Fox Sports had, which if you'd walk the halls of our environment and you heard the storyteller say the same thing, they can't find media. And at the time, to find media meant that you probably tried to look it up on our system, didn't find it, and then you looked it up in YouTube, and you found the clip you were looking for, the date you were looking for, or at least gave you some idea of the metadata. And then you go back to the system, sift through a few hundred entries, and you'd find it. And it gave us an idea to come out here and kind of emulate that consumer style, simple, right? Something that didn't need a manual, something that was easy to work through. And we met with, I think, 30 to 40 companies and didn't like anything. And then through, happenstance and serendipity, we ended up with Google. And they listened to us and they said, hey, we have this idea. We're going to train computers to know the difference between like a touchdown, an interception, and a fumble and all this. And we just kind of looked at them like, what are you talking about? But nonetheless, that was the beginning of what really was a journey for us. And we built the IaaS with Google, and we took our entire library, 30-something years of Fox Sports, and we trusted Google, and we put it in the cloud, and we ran models on it, and now what we affectionately refer to as Fox YouTube. And I think it has been one of the most transformative, processes, projects you could call, I've been part of in my life. And now I think, like you said, like live always is demanding. Yeah. And I think one of the challenges is that as you're telling a story, we want you to care more about it. We want to close the gap from the event happening to you feeling an emotion about it. And one of the ways you do that is being able to get to material as fast as possible. If something happens in a broadcast, that's a story, not unlike what you're telling. And for us to be able to go find materials to support that in seconds, I mean, I've even looked stuff up on a plane on that wonderful Wi-Fi, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. So I think that's a good example, and I think for now we're working towards like, where do we go from here? Yeah. What's the next step for us? And I think that, again, it's one of those things where you look at AI kind of came from the consumer land with people using, simple prompts to do things, ask questions, things like that. And now we're seeing it move into our world. I think, for us, it's as we move forward, it's becoming less about individual tasks, and it's become more and more about the workflow. And how do we create lighthouse workflows we tried things, maybe they didn't work, and now we're going to move into things that we know work. So let's take the IaaS back as an example. We obviously figured out we could make a search and have it do really well, but now we're working on, can you make an agent audit that search so that you only return good things? And can that agent then work with another agent to send that to editors on its own? Can it start to work autonomously and essentially become another, like I think I heard a term earlier today, the eager intern to help us get where we want to be. So I think ultimately that's part of what's helping our broadcast in that critical, live world.
I think it's really interesting as we talk about the nature of creatives and artists as they span from, filmmaking and television, episodic content, narrative content, to unscripted, to live sports, to broadcast. There's still storytelling involved, right? And you have a big moment that you're dealing with right now. We'll just go to that real quick.
We have a winner for the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
Canada, Mexico, and USA have been selected
to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
can't stop what's coming.
North America will be the heartbeat of a global party like we've never seen before.
America, goddammit! And we don't put up with no bullshit! We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day. An improbable team will now go down in history. You believe in miracles? I'm gonna show you how great I am.
The most exciting event in sports history is here. In America!
If that doesn't get you excited for the World Cup, I don't think anything will.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about AI being used to support the broadcast?
Yeah, of course. When we started planning for this, our leaders looked at us and said, this will be the biggest event you ever work on. It's the biggest event American sports will ever have. And that's a pretty bold statement.
Nice, yeah.
But if you look at the World Cup, and those of us who have worked one or the Olympics or any major film project, I mean, look, you probably got into this business because you A, wanted to challenge, and B, you probably wanted to do something no one else had done. And this is checking those boxes. I don't think we can do this without technology, to be honest. And I think how we look at AI and how we look at our partners, I think that most parts of the World Cup have been touched by technology, but specifically AI, and a lot of it actually Google, from resource allocations and scheduling and figuring out how we're going to do things in workspaces, up to Gemini creating different images, some of which you see in this, to I think using Gemini Enterprise for me, which is how I organized a lot of the different tasks, literally thousands of tasks to do things, to, like we talked about with the IaaS, to a lot of my teams that are in the audience that are working on everything from managing HDR to just auto highlights. I mean, you name it, technology is touching it in a way that we hope will help us put this on the air the best we possibly can. I mean, it's 104 matches over 39 days. There's no day off, I think, for the first 30. So I think that you can only scale up so much from a human and hardware perspective, so you have to lean into the technology and the AI to kind of bridge that gap and to be an extension of what your workflow was before. Some of it is still things that we're trying to sort out how we're going to do it. I think there's like 44 days to go, but I think that this, I hope when we're done with it, this will be a story, I think, of how technology helped bring something to the sports fan.
Amazing. And I know you have a few initiatives going on with respect to how you're thinking about AI. You can chat a little bit about those.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, the Gen AI stuff's been fun. And again, that's something that probably came out of consumer. I have a colleague who we root for different teams, and we like to share videos back and forth of those teams' mascots fighting, which I think is maybe not the best use of our credits, but nonetheless is a good time. But look, you see things that that the video there is Zlatan when we announced him as one of our World Cup talent, which I believe it's the first time he's done this. And it's pretty exciting. If you want to talk about your talent that sees themselves as a lion, well, it's a lot easier to create something with these tools than it is to go to a zoo, So I think it unlocks potential that we just didn't have before, right? Like you can sit in a creative meeting and things are actually possible that would have been non-starters before, right? Yeah. And across the board, like we have, we tell the story of international athletes. One of my favorites happens to be there. But also, like back to the World Cup. World Cup's tough because it's an international event. You want to tell the story fast. So when those players come off the pitch and they speak in their native languages, you got to translate that pretty fast. And I think that's where AI steps in and it handles it well for us. And I think we touched on some of the, the production excellence and augmentation is that, we're trying to use AI in a smart way and in a way that's, sustainable, but also a way that makes sense for us. And I think, the World Cup's gonna be a good example of that.
Wonderful, thank you, Dustin. I'm gonna switch now over, Marcia, to you. I think in your introduction and what we talked about up front, there's certainly, obviously, a lot of the discussion with Dustin is about workflows and efficiencies and productivity, as well as enhancing storytelling. But the work you're focused on is really about giving artists more control and expanding their capabilities and creative canvas. So why don't we hear a little bit about what you're up to and your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned, everything for our short film, Dear Upstairs Neighbors, started with the artwork. So these are all concept art pieces from the various scenes in the film. We start with a kind of more realistic painterly style, and then as this main character, Ada, who's very, very tired and is being kept awake by her exceedingly loud upstairs neighbors.
Yeah, I think it's turned on.
Yes, it's here.
Okay.
All right. So these neighbors are driving Ada completely bonkers. And as her mental state disintegrates, the painterly style evolves from realism all the way to what you see in the bottom right, which is the abstract expressionism that Connie was really going for. And you can really feel the paint brush strokes kind of coming off the screen at you. And we trained, as I said, the model on paintings that Connie and our production designer, Yingzhang Shi, painted. And as we were training, we wanted the style, but we realized Vio learned not just the elements that we were consciously aware of, like the color and the textures, but it also learned kind of deep artistic composition principles. So here's that 2,000 steps of training, and we got the color, we got the texture, but the composition is flat. It is looking from the bottom up because these are upstairs neighbors. Then with a little bit more training, it picked up on something Yingzhang had painted without consciously realizing that she was using two-point perspective. And that's something that is actually really hard to do unless you have kind of a fancy tilt-shift camera or you're doing some fancy moves in your CG setup. And Vio kind of learned that without us even telling it to, which is pretty amazing. And we realized Vio also learned 2D animation sheets. So this one's really exciting because Vio did something that we actually couldn't do in any other medium. So if you look at Ada's concept art, she has some design rules that are typical of 2D characters. Her little poof on the front of her head always faces away from camera, and her two little hair swoops on either side of her neck are always visible. But when you have a 3D character model, you can see in the turnaround, that doesn't change. It's a 3D model, it's static. Vio, trained on our concept art, learned to treat Ada as if she were in 2D all the time. You can see as it turns that the Vio one kind of does that magic little poof, and it switched to the other side. So this was super exciting because there's no other way to do this. And we needed the audience to really empathize with Ada. We wanted to make a story. Everyone has had loud upstairs neighbors. We wanted to make a story that was universally kind of understood, but we also wanted it to feel true. So animators don't express themselves with text. They animate. We're visual communicators. So we had to invent all new video-to-video workflows so that we could get the performance that we really wanted out of Ada, so the audience could see themselves in her. So we created rough animation using Maya, and then our animators used the fine-tuned version of Vio trained on our concept art to transform it into the final look, which is what we see here. And we also needed a way to kind of segment parts of a shot that we wanted to change. So by the end of the film, when Ada's enraged, Connie wanted the background to be moving in as kind of a chaotic state as her mind is in. But we still needed the audience to be able to see Ada's performance and understand what's going on with her. So we wanted to make the background really flicker very aggressively and keep Ada without the flicker. So we created a video-to-video workflow we call masked video transform, where we took the input animation, we then applied the style that we wanted, and we used masks to apply this flicker. And you can see now that the background has that effect of moving painting that Connie was really going for, but we're still able to kind of connect with Ada and see what she's doing very clearly. And of course, this is a real film. This isn't an AI demo. That's why we're going to festivals. We're in competition. If anybody's at Tribeca this year, June 6th, 12:15, we're part of Whoopi's wonderful world of animation. And in order to show in theaters, you need to go through color grading. You need 4K resolution. That doesn't just come out of the box. And so our group at DeepMind also created these professional quality models. So now we can have 4K, we upsample, we remove the artifacts as we upsample. So you can see here this little detail where we were able to remove some of the original artifacts from upsampling, and we actually get 16-bit color output so that we can go through just the regular process of color grading. Because we are artists, we're here to make the best film possible, and that just means that we need to be able to apply all the things we're creating into the regular film production process. And we're just excited to see what other productions use these tools.
Awesome, thank you. So this is pretty exciting. Let's, dive a little into the fact that as you explore this, we talk with Fox Sports and other broadcasters, traditional media companies, about, essentially improving the bottom line, right? Or having some impact in the business. And I think, Dustin, you and I have talked over the years about, well, what is the way in which we quantify or measure the impact? And I think you had, you talked about, well, there's time saved, there's, the ability to do more with the time available, and but ultimately it's about making better product, right? How do you think about AI within Fox Sports today when you're empowering teams across the enterprise? How do you think about the ROI, or do you?
I mean, I think you have to look at it, this is how I look at it, from the perspective of it's a progression, and it's another step in the journey of what we do. Like to think about it for a second. When we were driving over here, I was thinking of how we got here. You can go all the way back real quick, like the Lumiere brothers, let's get an image on a screen and project light through it, to Charlie Chaplin and comedy without sound, and then the Jazz Singer, it was the first time they did film with sound, all the way through. There were always these progressions, whether it was Jurassic Park was the first CGI film. Yeah. Like, I would love to go back to Victor Fleming and show him what they did with The Wizard of Oz. Like, I went to one of the earlier versions of it, and then I just saw the most updated version, and it's like, hats off to these guys. It's pretty incredible. But anyway, I think it's like the next progression of enhancing what we do. You couldn't do a lot of what Marcia showed years ago, right? You just couldn't do it. And now I think you're starting to see, like, remember when Jurassic Park came out, you're like, there's just dinosaurs on screen, and they don't look terrible. They're not animatronic. No. They literally look like you go pet them. Yeah. And I think that this, for us, you look at that ROI, and if you ask yourself, how do you make a show better? How do you make, our coverage of one of our key sports better? Well, you're not going to dump more money into it. That's really not an option anymore. And there's not that many ways. I mean, you get better talent, you can refine it. But when we talk about giving an artist the ability to do something they couldn't do, and let their mind be creative with that, like, I think that AI is really good at the volume work or doing busy work, but I don't think it does judgments, and I don't think it's creative. And that's probably debatable, but I think that, look, being creative is like part of what being a human is, and this is yet another tool of that progression. And I think for us, I look at it through the lens of, does it make us smarter? Like, if a camera shoots something on one of our sports, it doesn't know what it is, but we're getting to the point where now that camera, which is the first thing that we interact with a game, might now be able to tag it or help us tell the story better. And I think that is a progression that technology and AI is advanced. That is how we should be thinking of the quantifying of this, right?
Yeah, really, thank you. Marcia, as a filmmaker, I think in my opening slides, I talked about creatives, some of the creator economy, but I was talking about creatives seeing AI not as a calculator, but as a collaborator. With what you've just shown and the work you're doing at DeepMind and with collaborators, what is the artist's perspective on, I know there's, certainly there's resistance when you have a craft that you've honed over the years. Are you seeing now that artists and creatives are beginning, and directors are beginning to understand or embrace the fact that there are maybe new canvases on which they can paint or new ways to tell stories?
Yeah, well, I think everything we do comes from this idea that creativity is what makes us human. So that's why we're always artist-centered, always artist-driven. And I think what we're realizing is no matter what your job is, whether you're an artist or whether you run a laundromat, like there's parts of your job that are just chores. Mm-hmm. And that's the parts that we want AI to help take care of so that artists can focus all of their creative energy on actually bringing their vision to life. So when we think about what are the tools and capabilities we can build, that's always at the forefront of our mind. I think when we talk about your earlier question about the bottom line or the investment, I think we all know that this is an incredibly risky business we're in. I mean, there's something going on with all of us that we've entered into this industry, but we do it anyway. We take the risk. And where AI can help is it can reduce a little bit of that risk, where by using it for previs prototyping we talked a little bit about earlier, the directors can test so many different types of approaches to the vision and the story that they want. Cinematographers can test camera angles really easily, and modelers can test all different ways that a character can look in animation. We can get to the best story possible in a safer, de-risked way. And we can also tell more stories while we're doing it. And we can open the door for more voices and new types of stories because there's just going to be more resources to do it.
Interesting. In the 15 minutes or so we have left, I want to move from the current projects and the current state to what's right around the corner. So Marcia, let's stick with you right now. You just showed us a bunch of examples of doing things that were not possible without AI. What do you think is coming around the corner? What's in the labs or in people's minds as something that's feasible and attainable in the coming months, actually?
So something I'm excited about is this idea that we artists, we don't speak in prompts, right? And so oftentimes when we're trying to iterate on something, you have to type in that change. And I'm really excited for when we can have agents that take our feedback in whatever way we give them. So whether you're an artist and you're doing drawovers, or whether you're an animator and you're actually kind of emoting and you want it to understand what these emotions mean, I'm excited for a world where agents can take our feedback, our language, and then iterate just precisely what we want.
I can just imagine what that would be like. See a bunch of animators actually talking into a camera and making expressions and having that translated into, the prototypes that they want to see, the visualization. It's an interesting idea. Let's stick on that for a minute, Dustin. In your world of producing sports content and the shows around that content, do you think there are similar new ways of working that are coming that will change the human-computer interface, if you will?
I mean, I do. I think we talk about the progression of how things are moving. I think that data will become more available. You'll know more about the story you're involved in, or even become more part of it, right? Like I think we've always talked about, we're right now talking about production mainly, but I think that eventually the consumer side of it will change. I think I used to get these Ask Fox emails, which were very colorful. But people would always talk like, your announcers pick sides, or they talk too much about the X and O's, and eventually I unsubscribed. But I think that there are fans out there that really want to know the X and O's of a sport. They want to know the strategy. They want to know why we're doing this. Or there are people who are maybe more focused on the wagering angle. Or there are people that they want to pick their announcer. Or, and we've talked a lot about over the years, the second screen experience, but maybe it just becomes it's your experience. And I think that as we've worked with, camera to cloud or the camera doing more and more of the work, and I think I said this earlier, closing that gap between the event happening and you consuming it gets you closer and closer and closer to where I think maybe your experience starts to change. Like if you're watching an NFL game and you now know, the heart rates of these players and it's an exciting time of the game. I mean, I think that's a wide open canvas of what that data could be, but I think it is as compute and AI starts to figure out a way to parse through that data and present it to people in ways that are, more consumable, I think it opens doors for us. But also conversely, I saw some stuff this week that was, and it kind of blew me away, was dreaming an environment. That AI could dream an entire world and you can use that as a model for a set or a virtual world, or maybe you even take it further and you start coming up with, your ideas translated into the next Star Wars or the next Lord of the Rings or something like that. Like I think as you start to go down these roads of possibility, I think we're only really bound by what we can come up with, right? I mean, I think, look, technology for me has been more about, rather than taking a solution and then going looking for problems, figure out what you want to do that the technology doesn't exist to do it, and then go figure out how to do that. So instead of the other way around.
So I agree with that, right? You don't want to build a hammer that's looking for a nail, right? Right. But there is inherent in how, for decades, media has worked, whether in film or in broadcast, where you have kind of entrenched ways of working, systems, workflows, linear chains of, you do this piece and then you hand it off to the next one. We've joked about the fact that there are still companies where someone's running tape, right? Like, go take this tape to the next place in order for this next post-production process to happen. What do you think and it's open to both of you, what do you think it's going to take to break open these new ways of approaching how to tell stories or do the work, right? Whether it's the toil of the manual, tedious work, or it's just realizing that, hey, I don't need to do things the way I used to. What's it going to take in your environments to do that?
I think if we're talking about film,
okay,
we're in the really early days of what AI-assisted filmmaking or storytelling can be. So I always say that we're kind of in that moment where it's the old Nickelodeon machines. You've seen those where you see the frame by frame horse, you spin a wheel. So that's kind of where we are with AI-assisted filmmaking right now. And I think just as when film was becoming a new medium, it took the first movie that grabbed audiences. It took that train barreling towards the audience on a giant screen for people to say like, whoa, this is a whole new experience that we've not had before. And that's what we're building towards. Yeah. And that's what it's going to take.
Would you say that the work that you're doing at DeepMind, because we're Google, we're not in the business of making movies as part of our core business, but is that kind of the impetus behind some of the work you're involved in, is to kind of show what's possible?
Yeah, and I think that's why, because we're not in the business of making movies, that's why we're partnering with the best creators in the business to get to that moment. Yeah.
Excellent. Dustin, how about in your organization?
I mean, I think it's an extension of what Marcia's saying. I think you have to be inspired, right? Like, I think that there are moments in your career that meant more than the other stuff. I mean, look, you're right. There's always a part of your work that's a chore, right? But then there's the cool parts that kind of offset that. Like for me, I was most proud of something we did at the Super Bowl in New Orleans. When we came on the air, we did, I think it was like a Skycam type cable cam, down Bourbon Street, like through this pandemonium of people partying and throwing beads. And to me, it was like, wow, that's how we come on the air, right? And it was just unbelievable. But it reminds me, like thinking about this, talking to you guys, like when I was 3 years old, dating myself here, and my parents got a bootleg version of Star Wars, and Darth Vader came on the camera for the first time, and I was like, oh my God, look at that. But I think that that's what like propels us through, because look, a lot of filmmaking is difficult. A lot of television broadcasting is difficult. You know, I know a lot of people in this room, that do sports broadcasting. It is a long day. Or maybe you're not even the camera person. Maybe you're not the producer or the director. You're building all of those behind the scenes things. I think that these technologies can enhance and make all those jobs easier, or maybe better, or make more sense for people. And hopefully along the way that inspires them. And then they are maybe more interested in pushing that envelope, as well.
Interesting. So this is always a tough question. We've kind of gone across the 3 acts already, but you know, typically we write these questions. We're like, if you thought about 5 to 10 years from now, that in this era feels like many generations, right? So let's think, you know, beyond what you have in the works today or on your docket of projects. If you cast your mind out there, let's say 18 months. That still feels like a long time, honestly. But 18 months from now, what do each of you think is coming that will be transformational or super exciting, that will actually have a significant impact in your business or in the work you're doing or in the peer set you're part of?
Look, I think that we're seeing a convergence of technologies right now. If you walk around out there, you not only see AI, which, you know, what do? We went through kind of the ML stuff, which I can't believe it's called like old AI. It's not to, you know, the generative stuff, to the agentic stuff. And then I think you were actually the first one, Anil, who taught me this, is the physical AI, right? So now you're seeing like AI with robots. And then, you know, you read articles about quantum computing, and I can't help but think to myself, like, well, what happens when you converge all that together? What do we get? And or better yet, and then one of our favorite games, what's the art of what's possible? What can you do then? What world can you make? Or how can you tell the story of a sports broadcast with almost like very little boundaries? You know, maybe you get to the point where you're not thinking what the camera can see, and these are the field of views, and, you know, your director's selecting. Maybe you're assembling that all into a canvas that just can move as you want it to. I'm not sure, but I think that there are more and more possibilities than we are aware of.
Marcia?
Yeah, I'm going to build on that. I think it is about like...
Maybe hold the mic a little closer.
Yeah. It's all about how to tell the next best story and storytelling. And I'm excited about what does that mean when you are not limited by your platform or by this one screen, and you can actually tell a story that is multi-platform and can be experienced in many different ways and also in many different versions. And how are we going to create those worlds? And we saw a little bit of that with Genie. How are we going to create those worlds that are at once sticking to a creator's intent? It is a story that is out there, but also that the audience can make their own.
All right, so this is kind of a line of exploration that I'm quite interested in. And we showed, you know, we talked a little bit about Asteroid, we didn't show anything, but you just kind of poked at it. So we have, you know, this notion of dynamic content that's generated that is personalized or hyper-personalized. We have a notion of interactive content, immersive experiences. You know, quick answer, you know, do you believe that that is going to be increasingly a new form of media? And if so, who do you think, given that we have kind of the existing landscape of media, who do you think is going to actually bring those stories forward, given that there's a very large kind of established industry already?
I think this will definitely be. I think whoever brings it forward will be the first one to have a compelling story. Because I think even with the interactive piece, even with the audience being able to add their spin on it, at the end of the day, what we love, the way we understand ourselves, the way we understand the world is through stories. And that's why we go to movies, that's why we watch sports, that's why we watch plays and read books. So the first one to get the most compelling story is going to be the one.
Very interesting point. I love the line of thinking. Dustin, what do you think?
I mean, I think that experiencing what we do will obviously have to change because, I mean, like I use the example, my children don't watch anything but their iPads and their phones, but they do follow, games, they follow and they watch movies. So I think that as we talk about all of these possibilities and these immersive environments and different ways of telling a story or consuming a story, I think it needs to be able to cross multiple mediums, I guess, and translate simultaneously to all those different outlets because people are going to consume things differently. Some people are going to sit in a room like this and dark and watch, the amazement of film, but a lot of people still want to get, in a smaller device, or they want to just consume a piece of it. I want to just see the highlight, but I think it's incumbent on all of us as storytellers to make that as compelling as possible, whatever the medium is we have to figure out how to push those boundaries as well.
Thank you. Let's wrap up with one last question for you both. I think as we all listen to the media ourselves and see what's going on, there's just a proliferation of use cases. There's a lot of sensationalism. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of concern. But I think we've gotten to the place, I think, in 2026 where pretty much every organization and every industry is recognizing that they need to have some plan. So what's your advice for those in your domains or your industry to go from watching AI to actually practicing AI? What one or two bits of advice would you give maybe to other creatives and filmmakers?
My advice is dive in. Dive in and you'll quickly see it's not that scary because you're so needed. You're in control and you are needed to make anything that's good. And also, maybe you'll have some fun.
Awesome. Dustin?
I think you have to approach it as what is a single problem that you can allow us to solve for you? And it may not even be your career, just so that you start to trust the technology a little more. I mean, it could be, take this IKEA instruction and make it something I can actually read. You know what I mean? Or, but I think that's where you start. You have to build trust with it. And I think you give someone a simple task, let them see what AI or technology could do to solve that problem, and then build on it. And be like, okay, well, you did this, and now you can add on to this, and go from there. And I think it's the snowball effect, right? You kind of build with something small into something bigger, and hopefully it takes on.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for joining me today. I know each of the topics we just brushed upon and we could actually dive in. And I know when you showed a bunch of your slides and your content that each one of those things probably is kind of inspired a lot of questions. But please join me in giving a round of applause to Marcia and Dustin for joining us today. And thank you all for your attendance as well. Enjoy the rest of NAB.